Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Been off for a while, but sometimes you need to unplug and recharge just to get back into it, don't you?
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I'm certainly back, just like you, but a bit croaky. That's probably because winter's approaching here. But at least we've had some rain.
Yeah, winter is coming after all, and Game of Thrones is almost over too. So maybe you can combine the two experiences. Alrighty, so we'll stay on entertainment. You know, Game of Thrones did obviously has been causing much discussion. Everyone's excited, and I guess kind of sad that it's all coming to an end. But switching to another franchise, Star Wars, which we've spoken about before. Now, I think it's fair to say that neither one of us, I think, was all that, enamored with Disney's approach since Lucas sold, his baby to them. But what I'm finding interesting is that there's a lot of the internet being what it is, because there's plenty of people with time on their hands to give you their 5 cents worth about what's going on. But there's I did notice a trend around Kathleen Kennedy and Disney. The discussion being that they've mismanaged the franchise. So Lucas, for instance, had a huge outline. It couldn't fit into one film. So in effect, he already had the blueprint to make the films. Now, arguably, the first three, the original trilogy, I think there was enough meat there to sustain that. The prequels, well, probably it was only one film, but we'll give it to him that he needs to make a trilogy from a business perspective, and for all the flack that those films copped, they still had his imprint on them, so it still kind of felt like it. I don't know if it's fair to say that they've mismanaged it, but they obviously didn't go in with a plan in the sense of they had 3 films mapped out and we were going to do it this way. It's hard, isn't it? It's like people taking it over. This is the whole thing about it goes from a creator to a corporate mentality and it becomes a product. It was kind of a product before, but at least the creator was involved, and even though he was spinning that product to maximum effect, at least he knew what it was on about and what to do with it. And I don't know if it's fair to say that they've mismanaged it or whether the fans have a right to think that, they deserve better. I'm not sure. What do you think?
What are they meant to do? I mean, they're going to make a movie, right? I don't think Star Wars was ever intended to be a 36 film franchise. So that's why I sort of opted out after the first 3 films. I agree, fans have a right, but what do they have a right to expect? What do they expect? There's going to be a movie. It's like good films come out, bad films come out, dreadful sequels come out historically for any film franchise. And I understand fans love Star Wars. I understand that. But what are they expecting? Yeah, are they expecting to write the films themselves, or what? They're just being critical, aren't they?
Or is it that do they have a point if they say we're happy with whatever direction you want to take, but perhaps from film to film it was inconsistent? So to give you an example, the first film they made, post-Disney buyout was arguably a remake of the first film. But one thing that was put in there was a number of, I wouldn't say, they had a plan, but it was more like story threads. So they left a lot of open-ended things in there so that the next director presumably could pick them up and sort of expand on them more. And I think that was the approach they were taking. And the criticism that the last film copped was that basically Rian Johnson, the director, blew all those seeds up. So in other words, turned everything on its head. So where does it go to from here? And now it's looking like it's disjointed. And then, of course, Solo, which is the one that you actually went to see that in the cinema, didn't you, at the time? That's been sort of criticised as the film that ended the standalone films that they were doing, because they were planning on releasing those every 2 years. So It's hard. They might have a point, or it might just be that it's really hard to do these things and maintain expectations.
Well, I guess to give fans what they want is more movies. But when you've had prequels, which are kind of like the films that were already made, when you put in plots, I don't know who's writing this, and it's not a real world; it's a film. So I just don't know. I guess personally, I don't know enough about what their expectations are, but what expectations should they have except that the Star Wars logos goes up at the start of the film? I mean, it can't all be the same film.
Yeah, that's right. And it makes me wonder how this... So if we transition a little bit into like the future with streaming and whatnot, we'll use Star Wars as an example here. That it's like this replication of a theater-going experience. The big epic, Star Wars film that you can only see in a cinema. And now talk that, if you look at how streaming is impacting the industry in particular, and the sort of the behavior of the audience now, you don't need to go and watch a 2.5-hour film in a cinema, because you basically could watch 20 minutes of it at home, then you can watch another 10 minutes on the bus on your phone, then you can watch 30 minutes at lunchtime on your iPad, come back and finish it at home on your TV. And this kind of disjointed nature, so the runtime is irrelevant, the amount of episodes is irrelevant. It's just you just produce the whole thing, presumably, and just put it out there, and maybe put some mandatory markers as to when a certain point begins and ends. And it's almost like they've turned it into reading a book type experience, where you just pick it up and watch it as you go. And again, that's where I come back to, like, what are they expecting, and what do they think they should do? And then on the Disney side, how do they actually design these things going forward? There's talk of Rian Johnson's back in developing another trilogy, and the Game of Thrones producers, they're talking to them about producing a trilogy. And it's like, is that really the right angle that they want to take?
That's precisely right. Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's an important comparison between Star Wars and Lord of the Rings here, in that Lord of the Rings was written.
Yeah.
The story was written, and they turned it into 3 films. With the original Star Wars films, that was what Lucas created. And then everything else afterwards was tacked on. So it's not like they're departing from a story that's already been written. They're just trying to create a new one under the Star Wars franchise. So I don't know. And the other point is that 40 years ago, when those first films were made, film was different. Everything was different. The way you consumed content, everything. So understand why fans might be upset, but I don't know what they should expect. You can't go back to 1978. So what do you expect? You can only expect 2019. That's whatever they choose to do, good or bad.
And there's looking at it at a macro level, do you think Hollywood's really understanding this at all? There's a story there where Bob Iger from Disney said that the only reason they bought Fox recently was purely for streaming purposes. They need content, and they've made a lot of strategic decisions in the past decade to acquire as much really sort of brand name recognition content as possible, presumably so that when they launch this Disney Plus service at the end of the year, they'll just get a flood of people signing up, because it's got everything that people want. Particularly the Disney kids stuff, I guess, would probably be the good sort of place to have a look at, because you're not going to be able to get that anywhere else. You have to sign up to get it, because I'm sure Disney's going to pull all the rights and all the licenses back. And that could, Netflix, could they be in trouble, for instance? Who knows? Well,
and you're precisely right. So we've spoken about this ad nauseum in the past as well, but let's face it, the whole Marvel brand, the Star Wars brand, we've made remarks in the past that they don't. I guess filmmaking doesn't have much respect for the brand name anymore. It's just about pumping out another episode, getting people into the cinema, and then, charging for the streaming service. And that's what Disney have done, good or bad. As business, they have to survive, and that's what they've done. I don't think anyone else would have done anything different. And I think this is what we're seeing. So Star Wars now is an episode. And there's no difference, as we've also said before, really between the cinema and a series of Game of Thrones. Could be either or. Doesn't make any difference. I mean, if you were to move Game of Thrones to the cinema, would it work? Well, maybe because it's on a bigger screen. But would the script writing be better? Who knows?
But what about the sort of the old schoolers who it's almost, to me, it kind of feels like a last gasp, really. The Scorseses, the Spielbergs, they're getting together with the Academy and trying to stir up this thing that, Scorsese saying, I don't like the word content because it kind of, flattens out that or equalizes every type of content. So a film is no different to a TV show. But I don't know if he's actually understanding that maybe that is the case. That we've gone past the world of that he came up in, and it's ironic, I guess, because his generation of filmmakers were arguably the ones that really shook up the system. But when you actually go back and think about it, the format itself didn't change. It's just what they did with it that changed. Whereas now we're talking about format change. We're talking about how it's actually consumed is changing, and by definition it means that everything that they're holding most dear as in terms of what's sacred may no longer apply. And it kind of has echoes to me of the film versus digital debate that was happening in the early 2000s, where people said, nah, film is the only thing you can shoot on, and now everyone's digital. Maybe this is the same thing.
I agree. I think it's just part of the same disruption. And I think, to coin a phrase, we're in the post-film era.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like what we were saying before we got on. Instead of sitting down in one experience, which you could do, it's more like reading a book. You read it when you've got time, and you come back to it when you've got time. You just put a bookmark in it, and you can put it down, and then take the bookmark out when you're ready to go again.
Yeah, and just a further observation on that, all this commentary online, which is what's prompted this discussion, is just a further way to consume Star Wars content.
Yep.
The trailers now are released as content.
Well, so just want to touch on that briefly. There's a trend now where, studios, I think, although they haven't come out and said it, they're actually watching how many times the trailer gets watched on YouTube within the first 24 hours. And there was another article that I don't think I put up here, but the episode 9 Star Wars trailer that got released about a month ago, the numbers are a little soft, and they're worried, that maybe that's not translating into, big box office later, because the week before, the latest Avengers trailer shattered records.
Yeah,
that's just bizarre to me.
But this is the disrupted system. So we used to go to the movies, you'd see a trailer, and that might be a reason you go and see a film. Now you're consuming the trailer as part of consuming the film, which is just further content, longer form content.
Yeah.
So the reality is I don't think there's any difference anymore between a trailer and the film. Yeah. Just one's longer than the other.
Oh, as a final point, the only thing I will say is that quite often the trailer's better than the final product.
That's always been the case. That hasn't changed.
The Force Awakens trailer actually made me want to go watch the film, and then I watched the film and I was somewhat underwhelmed, shall we say. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So I'm sure Star Wars isn't going away, but I'm sure we'll have a look at it again. But it is a fascinating time, isn't it? In terms of how it's all working, and I kind of like it in a sense. You do lose that sort of old school feeling of content being special, any type of content being special, or you don't own a physical copy or whatever it is. There was something about that era that was kind of nice, but we've gone past it, and there are certain how would you call it? Efficiencies, and even just the experience of being able to access whatever you want, whenever you want, and watch it on the pace that you want, I think outweighs some of that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, it's very different days.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget to check out our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. Subscribe to our Vimeo, YouTube channels, and our RSS feeds, and you can listen and watch us on any device you see fit to use. We'd greatly appreciate your visits to the site, and hope you appreciate all the content and like it as well. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.